It's 5:30, so I'll call this meeting of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors to order. You take roll, please.
Sure. Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Here. And just to note that Supervisors Ayers and McDaniel will be participating electronically. Before we have the pledge tonight, I would just like to make some personal comments on the actions of the rioters in Washington, D.C. I find it disgusting and totally unacceptable. And I want the people of Rockbridge County to know that we, as elected officials, appreciate your comments, your concerns, whether you agree with us or not. But violence is never the answer, and we will never tolerate it. At this time, we'll have the invocation followed by the pledge. And when you say the pledge, please think hard on the words tonight. Thank you.
Dear Lord, thank you for that we live in the land of the free because of the brave. Please bring unity where there is division and harmony where there is strife. Please continue to bless us and protect us through these trying times. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While the room will be open to the public due to the size of the meeting room and social distancing requirements, no more than 10 attendees other than county staff will be allowed in the room at one time. Per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 63, all persons over the age of 5 that do not have a precluding medical condition are asked to wear a face covering. We will hold citizens' comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizens' comments remotely, and there are two options. You can join by telephone. You may dial in on one of the numbers listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by phone. At this time, we will elect the chair and vice chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Day.
I nominate Dan Lyons for chairman and David McDaniel for vice chair.
All right, we have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I second.
And a second. Any discussion? Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayer?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We'll do standing committee assignments. Finance Committee, Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Lewis, still willing to serve?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Building and Grounds, Mr. McDaniel, are you still willing to serve?
Yes.
And I will serve also. Solid Waste Committee, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Personnel Committee, Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Okay, Fire and Rescue, Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Blue Ridge Resource Authority.
That's where we start.
Okay. We'll get the rest later on. Sorry.
Pardon my interruption. If everyone could just make sure to speak into the microphone, make sure to get close to them. Those new microphones really need you close in.
All right. Has everyone had opportunity to look over the Board of Supervisors meeting schedule for 2021? Any objections? Do we need to vote on that, or are we good just?
It would be good.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the meeting schedule?
So moved.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move forward. There are no recognitions tonight?
Oh, sir.
Okay, so we will move on to approval of the minutes from the December 14th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
And a second? Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Citizens' comments? Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Anybody electronically?
There are currently no hands raised or any questions for comment.
Okay. Mr. Bolster, you have the county appropriation resolution?
Yes, sir. If you go to your financial package, you'll see there's a memorandum, and in it, it has the activities of the Commissioner of the Revenue, Mr. Weitzel, who is here this evening. As you can see at the very top, there's a series of 2021 forms and applications that have been sent out. I'll just go ahead and read through those. Meals and lodging forms, those are due no later than the last business day of each month. The business license applications, those are due no later than March 2nd. The business personal property form, that is also due no later than March 2nd. And also the tax relief application for elderly and disabled, that is due on April 1st. At this point, his staff continues to, or is processing business licenses. Some other activities include preparing their 2022 budget, both for the county, so that would include the Commissioner of the Revenue and the land use budgets, and also preparing the compensation board budgets to be submitted up to the state. As far as wrapping up some 2020 action items, they are processing real estate transfers and any new construction assessments. In addition, back on the 4th of January, he brought on a new employee, a new staff member. Her name is Victoria Fleming. And then lastly, just wanted to mention that Mr. Weitzel and his team have gone into a split shift schedule just as a precaution coming out of the holiday season as it relates to COVID-19. So we just ask for citizen patience, as they're going to basically have 2 or 3 on staff each weekday. And so things may be a little bit slower getting to phone calls and assisting citizens at the counter. If there's no questions for Mr. Weitzel, I'll transition to Ms. Travato's activities for the month, our treasurer. So she did submit some debt set-off claims to the state. You can see that there's a potential of 5,529 individuals with an estimated tax collection of $1,247,901 that could come back to the locality should they be approved for processing. And then just a couple dates. Estimated fourth quarter state income is due to Ms. Travato's team on the 15th of this month. And for dog owners, dog tag license fees are due prior to the 31st of January. The 31st is a Sunday. So folks need to get those completed by the 29th, which is that Friday. And then lastly, just as Mr. Weitzel prepared his budget, so did Ms. Travato, both for the locality, for the county, and then also for the state, the comp board. And if there's no questions, I'll go ahead and transition to the Fiscal Services Department. Just an update on the CARES Act. You all know that just a few days prior to the December 30th cutoff for expenditures, that new legislation was signed, and part of that legislation extended CARES Act expenditures through December 31st, 2021. So at this point, staff will continue with the spend plan that was previously approved. If there's any potential changes, we will be discussing that with the Finance Committee as we move forward in this calendar year. With that, if you take a look at the line chart that's in the financial package, I just want to emphasize, as we're about halfway through the fiscal year, that the estimated line charts, revenue and expenditure lines, represent 3 years of history. And so, of course, current year doesn't always match up with what history has done. So at this point, you can clearly see that revenues are well above expenditures and the anticipated amount at this point in the fiscal year. The bulk of that is related to the transfer of CARES Act money into the general fund in support of public safety functions, to include the sheriff's office, fire rescue, the jail. And so as far as the expenditures, we are up. For the month of December, we were about $732,859 higher than anticipated. Some of that is linked to fire rescue. You may recall this in previous presentations. They did pay higher in their 2020 settlement with the city of Lexington than the previous fiscal year. And also the paper call does include the fourth quarter data from FY 2020, which we didn't have in the previous fiscal year. And then of course, the board had approved funding the volunteer agencies with a lump sum support in relation to COVID-19, and that was back last calendar year. We also have the welfare expenditures are up about $279,000. That is a result of earlier request for funding in FY 2021 versus 22. And actually just last month, they asked for an additional 100,000. So they're up to 650,000 for the fiscal year. And so we'll be watching that as the next 6 months progresses. And then I'll just mention the PSA. You may recall last month, the board approved an appropriation resolution to fund the Route 60 East project that was not funded by the revenue bond that was done in 2018. And so obviously that's not an expenditure that we've ever had in the past. And it's a brand new appropriation for this fiscal year. And so that particular number is up almost $295,000. With that, if there's no questions on the line chart, I'll just move to the request to approve bills. I do have a couple requests. I have a couple bills that I need to walk on. One is the PSA payment for the Route 60 project. They were able to get that to me on Friday of last week. And so that's for $75,618.81. And then in addition to that, the January payment to the Horse Center for the anticipated revenues that we expect for January to June 2021. So with that, it's going to change, if approved, it'll change some of the numbers on the document that you have before you. For the general fund, that's now going to be $1,155,678.71. And so total county bills would now be $1,211,531.37. And the total of all bills would be $1,396,755.01. There's 434 invoices on the bills list. I did take some notes when I reviewed the bills. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer it. With that, the recommendation of staff is to approve payment of the bills for the month of January with the changes.
Any questions for Mr. Bolster? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the appropriation resolution as amended by Mr. Bolster?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Bolster.
Thank you.
And we're going to have a presentation by Robinson, Farmer, and Cox. Are they ready, Mr. Bolster? Or?
Yep, I did notice they were one of the attendees. So I know Mr. Yanyich is going to transition them to panelists. And so while he's doing that, I'll just go ahead and go through the agenda report.
What's the name of the person I'm promoting?
Yes, you've got James Kelly and
James Kelly.
then Sadie Gibson.
Okay, they've been promoted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so the annual audit, known as the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is submitted to the board for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Just wanted to note that it is the responsibility for both the accuracy of the data and the completeness and the fairness of the presentation within the CAFR. It all lies with the government and management in particular. So to the best of our knowledge, the CAFR represents in all material respects, the proper reporting for FY 2020. So with that, as I mentioned earlier, we've got James Kelly and Sadie Gibson with Robinson Farmer Cox, and they will do a presentation that highlights some of the financial reports that are in the annual audit. So with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Steve. It's nice to be with you all virtually. We're going to go over the results of the FY 2020 audit. Going to go over the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting that the county did receive. We'll briefly summarize the opinions that we issued on the financial statements, go over some brief financial highlights, maybe talk about the CARES Act a little bit for FY 2021. And then we'll have time for any questions, or be glad to answer any questions if there are some. For the, I can't recall how many years in a row now, but the county for FY 2019 submitted their CAFR to receive the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. And the county did receive that certificate again. We've put the FY 2020, we've applied for the certificate again for the FY 2020 CAFR. So we anticipate receiving that, that the county will receive that award again for the 2020 CAFR. In the audit, we were paid to issue our professional opinion on whether the financial statements are fairly stated and materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Under government auditing standards, we're also required to issue a report on your internal control, not an opinion, but a report, and also a report on the internal control over your major federal programs. And make sure you're in compliance with the uniform guidance standards. As a result of our audit, we issued an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that we can provide based on our audit. And that opinion, to summarize, basically states that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and we're not aware of any material adjustments that need to be made to those financial statements. So again, that's the highest level of assurance we can give, and the kind of the A+ of the audit opinions. as I said, we're required to issue a report over your internal control system. As a result of our audit, we found no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the internal control system. If we had, we would have brought those to your attention. We're also required to do certain state compliance work in regards to your budget and purchasing and VRS. We had no issues there as well. And since you do receive over $750,000 in federal assistance, we're required to audit at least 20% of those expenditures. For 2020, we audited the child nutrition cluster and also the coronavirus relief fund, or the CARES Act, because the actual expenditures related to FY 2020 expenditures exceeded $750,000. So, and obviously there was a lot of revenue that was deferred and was not spent by June 30, 2020. So that will be another area of audit that we look very closely at. There's going to be a lot of oversight by the feds, I believe, to make sure these funds are spent properly. And we've been in contact with Steve and Spencer throughout this pandemic to make sure that everybody was on the same page. So that'll be a focus of our FY 2021 audit, I'm quite sure. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Sadie Gibson. She'll go over some of the financial results.
Hi, everyone. Sadie Gibson here. I'm a member of the audit team for the county for many years. I'm going to go over some of the highlights from the comprehensive annual financial report for FY20. I'm going to start by talking about the first two exhibits in the financial statements, exhibits 1 and 2. They're known as the government-wide financial statements, and they're presented on the full accrual basis of accounting. Those two financial statements start on page 16 of the financial report. So the data that I'm going to talk about and highlight on the government-wide financial statements, it covers the entire primary government, which will be the governmental activities as well as the business type activities of the county. So the governmental activities, that's going to include the general fund, your capital projects and purchases fund, as well as the school capital projects fund. And then when I talk about business type activities, that's the Blue Ridge Resource Authority's activities. So in total, the county ended the fiscal year with a net position of $38.8 million. And of that, about $21.2 million was unrestricted. The county decreased its net position during fiscal year 2020 overall by about $440,000. Now, the governmental activities actually saw an increase in net position by $1.6 million. And then the business type activities, or the Blue Ridge Resource Authority, saw a decrease in net position of $2.1 million. Now I'm going to talk about that some more towards the end of the slideshow, but the decrease in net position for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority was driven by non-operating expenses that are related to the landfill closure and post-closure liability. Now, the county ended the year with a net investment in capital assets of $14.9 million. That figure is the investment in capital assets net of depreciation that's been accumulated over time, and also net of the debt used to acquire those assets. So here I've got a chart that shows the county's government-wide net position, again, that total figure for the entire primary government over the last 5 years. It's a little bit boring because it doesn't show a lot of change over that 5-year period, but you can see the composition of net position here. The red portion is unrestricted, the green is restricted, and the blue is that net investment in capital assets. So the restricted portion did show an increase as compared to the prior year of about $1.6 million. And that is related to that water sewer capital project along Route 60, the funds restricted for that project, as well as funds restricted for the Virginia Horse Center debt service. Again, the county's total net position has really hovered around that 40 million mark for the last 5 years. Okay, I'm going to talk also about the fund financial statements. So when I'm going over the fund financial statements, that's going to be exhibits 3 through 6 that begin on page 20 of the financial report. These exhibits are prepared on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is similar to your budget. And the funds included in the governmental funds are only the general fund, and then the county capital purchases, capital projects fund, as well as the school capital projects fund that didn't actually have any activity for fiscal year 20. So those governmental funds had a combined ending fund balance at the end of FY20 of 30 million approximately, and that was an increase compared to the prior year of 1.8 million. The general fund balance increased by about 2.2 million, while the capital projects related activities had a decrease in fund balance of about 356,000. The county ended the year with $23.8 million in unrestricted cash and cash equivalents. And the unassigned fund balance is reported in the general fund amounted to 19.8 million at the end of the fiscal year. Now we like to look at the ratio of that unassigned fund balance and the general fund to annual general fund expenditures as a good measure of financial health for the locality. And that ratio this year resulted in a 30.71% ratio. And I'll show you how that stacks up with prior years in just a minute. So this chart shows the fund balance by type just for governmental funds. Again, just those funds I talked about, the general and the capital projects related funds. So again, that largest portion represented is unassigned and available to meet ongoing operations, 19.8 million. The non-spendable portion is at 4.2 million, restricted at 1.8 million, and assigned at about 4 million. So this year, fiscal year 20, saw a little shift in fund balance between unassigned and non-spendable, a decrease in the unassigned category and an increase in the non-spendable category. And that was due to reclassification for funds that had been advanced to other entities such as RENA and the Blue Ridge Resource Authority and also the Public Service Authority. So there was about $4 million advanced to those other entities that had previously been included in that unassigned fund balance. We suggested a move to put those funds in the non-spendable category this year. So not really a change in total fund balance, just a shift in the classification for fiscal year 2020. So again, before I was talking about that ratio where we're considering your unassigned fund balance in relation to general fund expenditures plus the school fund expenditures, the way that the county's policy is written. So this year, that ratio again was 30.71%. And that really is in line. It's slightly down from the prior 4 fiscal years, but still reasonable and well above that minimum threshold established for the county of 20%. So next, I'd like to cover just a little bit more detail just for the general fund on revenues and expenditures and a budget analysis. So the next 2 slides will only include the general fund, and their information here is prepared on the modified accrual basis, just similar to your budget. For fiscal year 2020, the county came in over budget for revenues by about $2 million. And there you can see in this depiction here, there are 2 areas that really drove that increase over the budget amount. So those are general property taxes. You can see 944,000 over the budget. And that really relates to an increase in assessed values for public service corporations that was experienced in FY20. And then the other category that James also mentioned here is in the federal revenues. Anticipated federal revenues were 163,000, while the inflow of federal funding in relation to the coronavirus resulted in a positive budget variance of 1.4 million. And guidance on that coronavirus on the coronavirus relief funds, that program is evolving, and we'll continue to work with the county staff as they administer that new program and ensure compliance with that. So similar to the prior schedule, here I've got the general fund expenditure analysis. It's just a budget to actual comparison just for the general fund on a modified accrual basis. The county's expenditures came in 2.1 million under the final budgeted amounts. And you can see the largest category where expenditures came in under budget are in relation to education. So I thought I'd explain a little bit about that line, given that the education expenditure can fluctuate some based on some other factors. So the education expense in the general fund represents the amount of funding that's needed by the school board to balance revenues from all sources with expenditures. So when you have fluctuations in state or federal revenues, or if you have fluctuations in expenditures from what's been anticipated, that's going to directly affect the general fund expenditure for education. So in fiscal year 2020, the school fund budgeted expenditures were approximately 1.2 million more than what actual expense was. So since actual expenditure in the school fund was less than anticipated, that also affected the general fund. The general fund expenditure for the school, for education function was also less. So I have a few slides on some statistical information I'll share with you. These certainly won't come as a surprise to you all, but it helps to keep it in your mind. Property tax rates over the last 10 years are presented here. You can see for tax year 2020, of course, there's an increase in the personal property category, and that'll be reflected in FY21's financials and forward. I'll share with you how the assessed values in property have changed over the past 10-year period. And in this chart, just for your reference, the real estate is presented at 1/10 of the actual assessed value. That way we can fit all these lines on in the same plane. So you can see here that in most categories of real estate, personal property, machinery, and tools, they're all relatively flat over a 10-year period. There's one category showing an increase in assessed value, and that's public service. And again, we did see that 12% increase in public service assessed values in FY20. I also like to highlight some information on the collection of property taxes during the fiscal year. So you can see the total levy for fiscal year 2020 was right around 30 million, and 28.5 million of that was collected in the year of the levy. So that's about a 95% collection rate. And you can see historically over the last 10 years, that collection rate has ranged between 95 and 97% approximately. So, even given the difficulties experienced towards the end of fiscal year 2020, the collection rate remained consistent. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit about the business type activities for the county, which, as I said before, consists of the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. And those activities are reported in the financial report on Exhibits 7, 8, and 9. They begin on page 24 in the report. And these figures are all presented on the full accrual basis of accounting. So the Blue Ridge Resource Authority had overall ending net position of 23,587. I'm going to switch to this next slide that gives you a little bit better data. The Blue Ridge Resource Authority had operating income for the year of $435,000 right here. And that includes, of course, a charge for depreciation of $504,000 that's generated by accounting entries and not by an actual cash outflow. So that being said, the non-operating activities for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority include a significant charge for landfill closure and post-closure for fiscal year 20 that really drove the change in net position. As I said before, there's an overall change in net position, a decrease of 2.1 million. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the landfill closure costs and post-closure liability. In prior years, the estimate for the liability for closure and post-closure was based on an estimate by engineers. And then a portion of that now is based on an actual contract, because the closure process is begin contracts established for the old landfill, and actual costs for closure were incurred during FY20, as well as an adjustment to the liability to reflect what remains in that contract for closure. So again, a bit of a course correct on the liability, and then also this number reflects expense incurred for closure on the old landfill. And of course, in relation to the still open portion of the landfill, the liability for closure and post-closure is updated annually based on percentage of use as well as by inflation. So that also impacts that number. At the end of the year, the Blue Ridge Resource Authority did actually experience an increase in cash and cash equivalents by about $136,000. So while the net position, is adjusted for that increase in liability, that there is still a net net increase in cash and cash equivalents. So in conclusion, we have provided management of the county a memorandum with some information primarily about some upcoming governmental accounting standards that will be implemented over the next few years. We did propose adjusting journal entries as a result of our audit. There were 16 adjustments proposed in total. Some of those relate directly to component units of the county. And the only material adjustments had to do with recording that deferred revenue for the CARES Act this year that was really an unanticipated item. As James mentioned before, I happen to know it's six prior years that the county has received the government finance officer's certificate of achievement and excellence in financial reporting. And again, as he said, we feel this comprehensive annual financial report meets their standards for excellence, and this report has once again been submitted for that prestigious award. So that concludes our presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and once again, congratulate Mr. Bolster on another fine job this year. Mr. Bolster, you're going to present the CIP for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I am. If you don't mind, I do need to go back to my memorandum. I did not turn a page on the activities for the treasurer. And so I did not communicate item number 5, which was a request to consider extending the county decal in order to evaluate the elimination of decals in calendar year 2021. I know over the last several days, staff has been working with or discussing with Ms. Travato this request. And so she had asked that this be made or communicated in our memo of activities to the board.
Okay, the board will look at that at our next meeting, but we do need to extend the deadline in case we decide to take any action. So do I have a motion to extend the deadline till, you say June 30?
I think if we just bring it back to you, it'd probably be best because it's going to take an action of the board, probably in an ordinance. It may be a resolution, but it's either a resolution or an ordinance.
Okay, and we'll do that at the next meeting then?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Bolton.
All right, thank you, Chairman Lyons. I appreciate that. If you go back into your board docs package, you'll see for the request for the provisional adoption fiscal years 2022 to 2026, the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program. You all recall the board met in late November and received a presentation on the draft CIP. Staff came back on the 14th of December and communicated there was one update to the CIP, which was an inclusion of a fleet services worksheet to purchase a vehicle AC recharge and recovery machine. So at this point, outside of that, there's been no changes since the December 14th presentation. The way this works is that if the board provisionally adopts the CIP, that'll assist department heads with planning their operational budget that's in the general fund. If there's any kind of updates that occur over the next several months as we continue on the FY22 budget cycle, we'll provide those updates to the board. So we don't historically have any kind of resolution in regards to the provisional adoption, but staff is requesting a motion, a second, and a roll call vote if it's the pleasure of the board.
You've heard the request. Are there any questions of Mr. Bolster first?
Does the county CIP include the school CIP at this time?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
I believe it's attachment B.
I just wanted to make sure that what we were voting on included that. And I'll make a motion to approve as presented conditionally.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. All right, Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Bolster.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Suter,
Yes.
consideration of the Virginia Department of Wildlife resolution.
Yeah, so on December the 8th, the DGIF, actually DWR, issued a press release notifying the intention to begin enforcement of House Bill 1604 on January 1st. Because it wasn't widely distributed during the budget session or the last spring or the legislative session last spring, the December announcement really came as a surprise to everyone, from county officials to outfitters to the general public. And very succinctly, the law requires that any person aged 17 years and older using a DWR owned or managed facility, i.e. a boat ramp, to have a valid hunting, trapping, or fishing permit, a Restore the Wild membership, access permit, or current certification of boat registration issued by DWR to use the facility. The cost of the access permit is $4 daily or $25 per year, and violation could result in a fine of up to $50. And there's multiple concerns with this legislation. Locally, many businesses rely on dollars generated by tourism on our rivers. Additionally, having to buy a permit may well be a barrier for some low-income families. And finally, there's a concern that enforcement would put more pressure on privately owned river access points as folks try to avoid those areas where they could get a ticket or have to pay a fee to use the location. There is a resolution attached in your board package, and it describes in more detail the detrimental impacts, potential detrimental impacts to residents, businesses, landowners, and the local tourism economy, and it requests reconsideration of the law at the General Assembly level. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Suter? I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
And a second. Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
McDaniel.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Suter. Chief Ramsey. Give us an update on the Glasgow responses and talk to us a little bit about vaccination planning. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First, I'd like to recognize we got Captain Sherry Wilcox in the audience with us tonight, and President Larry Mayo here to answer any questions as well that may come up during this presentation. But as mentioned in the agenda item, as you may recall, on August the 10th, we received a letter from the first aid crew that expressed a concern about being able to cover 7 nights a week. This was actually one of 2 letters. We received one sometime back. Before that, in receiving that letter, we reached out. I reached out to the captain there. We set up a meeting and kind of with their executive committee to discuss the several different options, and essentially they ended up voting on coming to the board and requesting the need for expanded coverage, essentially 24-hour coverage 7 days a week. Prior to the September 14th meeting, the squad actually met. They had some members request a special call meeting, which they did that. I was not present for either of the meetings, but they did vote to rescind that particular request prior to the presentation. We essentially, at the September 14 meeting, went through where we were at that point, but also honored the request to rescind the 24-hour request and continue the 12-hour day or 6A to 6P request 7 days a week. Since that time, and one of the other action items that went along with that was that we would work with the leadership there to monitor activity, that kind of thing. And Captain Wilcox has been great with sharing calendars to ensure that the nights were covered and things like that. So there has been in the agenda item, I shared two graphs there that to show a little bit of, with the exception of November, November was a busy month, but there has been an increase there in performance. As you can read in the agenda item, that the squad since then has added 1 fully trained BLS provider. 4 trainees have joined since then. They're enrolled in the EMT class. They've had a member take the driving course and is cleared to drive at this point. They're spending a lot of time at the building learning, riding with their membership, pulling their duty nights, and also on occasion with the career staff as well. So you can see there that there has been an improvement, which we definitely appreciate that. And in one of the items that spoke with Captain Wilcox on with the approval, one of the things that we watched was the dispatch to response time in minutes there, and you can see a great deal of improvement there from in December to 7.12 minutes from the time that the call was dispatched to the unit responding. Having that number under 8 minutes is good, because at the 8-minute mark it rolls over to next due, which will essentially mean that there would have the next due agency or the next due ambulance responding there as well. So I think it's a good report, and we'll continue to work with Captain Wilcox and President Mayo there with the membership of the rescue squad, and continue to monitor that as we move forward. Any questions?
Just a comment, Captain Wilcox, President Mayo, thank you very much. And please extend our gratitude to your members. What you have done is a pretty remarkable turnaround, and I appreciate everyone's efforts.
All right, and then just a brief comment on what we've done so far with the coronavirus pandemic. As everyone knows, you can see on the dashboard that our numbers continually to rise in our area, which causes concern countywide as well as the two cities. I pulled the numbers off of the dashboard just prior to the meeting today, and to date for the Rockbridge County areas, 803 cases have been submitted. For Lexington is 693 and Buena Vista is 586. So and that's all been within the last couple of months. So with that, I know you all have probably gotten a lot of questions. I know Mr. Suter has as well as we have. There was a brief pause on the drive-through testing sites that we were doing. Essentially, we were doing 2 a week, one being in our office, and then one being at the Augusta Health Urgent Care there on Greenhouse. So with the vaccinations coming, things like that, there was a brief pause in that in the testing to focus on getting the vaccine rollout. Since then, I'm pleased to announce that we just sent it out today that we do have another drive-through test site in partnership with the health department Thursday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at our office. And then we're going to essentially attempt to continue that on a weekly basis for as long as we need to. There was a lot of support and requests for continued testing. So with that, on kind of the positive side of the things is that the vaccines are here. Just to kind of start out on the big note, again, off of the Virginia Department of Health website, for the Commonwealth, there's been 560,400 vaccine doses distributed. To date, there's been 189,283 that's been administered throughout the state. 174,000 have received one dose throughout the Commonwealth. I reached out to our local rep this afternoon, and we didn't have the numbers from last week, essentially, but for the week of December the 21st, there was 200 doses administered that week, and that's the same week as Christmas, so it kind of started late there. For the 29th week, 430 doses was administered in our area, or the Central Shenandoah Health District. So last week, the numbers were much higher than that. For locally, we've had two sponsored Virginia Department of Health events where we administered fire EMS. Both events have been held at the Lexington Fire Station to be centrally located. Got to have a big space to be able to house everybody, because we have the ones that are waiting. Once you get the vaccine, you have to wait 15 minutes before you can leave the premises. So it has to have room for people to stretch out there. But for the fire EMS folks, career and volunteer countywide, we've had 73. The first time, the second number, I didn't really get a good number because there was a lot of other folks mixed in with law enforcement, some nursing staff, school nursing staff, the Institutes of Higher Education was involved in that. So I didn't really get a good number of how many actual fire and EMS workers that we had throughout our local area, but a good number. The second turnout, I believe, was a little higher for the second day. So the health department appreciates the assistance given through Carillion. This week, Thursday and Friday, Carillion's doing a big push to provide vaccinations for all 1A folks, and then moving into 1B. We're actually planning we have a meeting with the school leadership tomorrow, and planning on moving into 1B the week of 25th of this month to start with school staff vaccinations. And like I say, we work with them. We have a virtual meeting scheduled tomorrow at 10 o'clock to start working through that planning process as we move forward. So VDH is also sending about 100 doses a week to the health center. So they're also providing vaccinations to like the smaller clinics, the dentist office, things like that. So it's a big working partnership between the health center, health department, emergency management, and then Carillion is also the 14th and 15th this week has actually been a big push. We're actually providing some staff members to help with that vaccination pod there at the hospital. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So some of the groups that you described are in this phase 1B, and you mentioned that there are other people in other groups in phase 1B that you didn't mention at all having a chance of this till probably February at the best or something.
So
it seems like other health departments, planning or districts are far ahead of this. And obviously this is not what you do professionally, but you're with the conduit we have to the health department. So I'm just wondering if they plan on ramping this up.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so in phase 1B, police, fire, and hazmat have been done. Corrections.
Just to be clear, that's only 2 or 3 of the categories in 1B.
Sure.
So anyone over 75.
It does, and the idea there is the health center is working on the local clinics, and they're still working on plans to be able to administer that. But in talking with the health department officials, the idea there is to get the vaccinations out in the doctor's offices, pharmacies, and that way they can go get their vaccine essentially just like they would a flu shot. But again, that's just in conversations and planning. I really, we kind of go on the guidance of how things, how the health department wants to proceed in the Central Shenandoah district. So we were approached as far as setting the planning up for the school system, which we hat in hand there, do whatever they need for us. But I got the list here for the 1B of other folks, and I don't really have a good answer for some of the other things that are mentioned in here, only for what we've been what we've been tasked to work on and assist.
I guess then the message for the back to the health department is I've had constituents asking me about that and understanding these phases and not seeing that they're able, even though they're a group that's allocated, aren't able to get it. So
we have weekly conference calls.
Yeah.
Hey, like I say, I can approach that with those folks. Like I say, we'll be on calls with them tomorrow. We have a weekly conference call on Wednesdays, every Wednesday morning with those folks. So I can definitely mention that and see if we can get you an answer for that.
Supervisor Lewis, we had a conference call last week, and that we did bring that up as one of the key things is how to get the message out as to where folks that are 75 and older can get this. And so they're working on a plan on that. So that was one thing that we brought up to make sure that we could get that word out.
That's one group that has expressed interest. The other is the agricultural community is also in phase 1B. I don't know when that's going to, what date that would be available for them. But, that's just the point. People are concerned, and we're supposed to be getting them, and we can't find them.
If I may, to follow up to Mr. Lewis's question, how are you rolling it out to the long-term care facilities? Are you actually going to those facilities to administer to the patients, or?
Mr. Daniels, I really don't have a good answer for that. That's not one of the conversations I've been involved with. I do know that with the health department is actually training folks to administer the vaccines as they go through this process. Just from what I can speak to, I've sat through taken the online training as well to be able to administer the vaccine as we move forward to the larger pods. But I don't. That's an answer that I'll have to get for you. I don't know the exact answer to that one.
That, and as well, I think, along the lines of what Mr. Lewis was talking about, I noticed one of the groups was manufacturing. Are we going to try to set up plans to actually go to some of our manufacturing plants to do it on site, or is it going to be more of what you discussed their employees having to go to a pharmacy or a doctor's office or something like that to receive.
I'll get that answer for you and report back. I don't know. I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in those conversations as far as manufacturing facilities and things, but I will certainly get an answer and get that back to you. Or
yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I understand there's a lot of unknowns. I just think if it can be done, it would be beneficial and supportive of our local businesses if we could actually run some sort of clinic at their facility to administer the doses versus asking their employees to either lose time from work or whatnot to go somewhere, try to get an appointment to receive the vaccine.
Sure, absolutely. I'll follow back up with you on that.
But thank you, Chief Ramsey, for all your hard work.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Suter, update on the cigarette tax?
Yes, as a result of the board's November 23rd work session, I did some additional investigation about what other localities in our area are considering with regard to the cigarette tax, which, as you know, for the counties for the first time can implement on July 1st. And as you know, counties are authorized to tax up to 40 cents per pack. I've checked with managers nearby, and right now Amherst has approved a 27 cent tax per pack. And although their board has not yet considered it, I am anticipating that Augusta to do something in line with Stanton and Waynesboro, who currently sit at 30 cents a pack. Also, there seems to be little appetite for creating a regional authority to administer this. And you may recall that Commissioner of Revenue David Weitzel, who's with us this evening, believes that his staff can handle administration in-house, and obviously the county would need to assist with that in getting everything set up and assisting his office. So also in November, the board discussed the desire to have the three localities locally here, Rockbridge, Lexington, and Buena Vista, at similar rates. And I've discussed this with the Lexington and Buena Vista city managers, and I believe they will be recommending 30 cents to their councils. That's what staff we were looking at. Didn't want to go above anything that would impact any interstate, anything coming off the interstate for purchase. And so that's what we recommend should the board want to go in that direction. And you'll see in the board report, it's just about impossible to predict the actual revenues which could be generated. There's just too many variables in there, in anything from socioeconomic to just population in general. But the only thing we could look at was population. And we looked at 5 localities that currently have a 30-cent tax, cities, of course, and did an average based on the population and applied that ratio to Rockbridge County, and conservatively we think it would generate in the neighborhood of $300,000. But there's so many variables there, numbers of stores, the number of people that smoke, that type of thing. Should the board wish to pursue this, Ms. Huffman is prepared to bring an ordinance back for your consideration at the first February meeting. And if the board did wish to pursue this, we would need to confirm what rate to insert. And
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Comments from the board?
Yes, sir. Several things. I think it's important to note, as Spencer's research shows, that every city that, or almost every city, I couldn't be sure of the number, but certainly the majority of them, as soon as when they could implement, have implemented. So it's something that jurisdictions do, and I think the concept is the same for admissions. The Commonwealth is saying this is where you need to go get money as they continue to lessen the support to the locality. So I don't wish to further burden our citizens, but I think as Spencer mentioned, a lot of folks that will be coming off the interstate, which we do have 2 of in this county, hopefully will pay the majority of this, which will then help our citizens as we have revenues to replace personal property and real estate tax. So it's something that I think we should proceed with in short.
Do you have a rate in mind, Mr. Lewis?
Well, the recommendation was 30 to go along with the other jurisdiction with our cities within our county boundaries, as well as be comparative to surrounding jurisdictions. So 30 cents.
Any other comments?
I would say that Ms. Huffman and I have discussed this, and we think that the amount of time that would take to prepare for this, there's the procurement of the stamps and setting up those contracts and that type of thing. We would recommend that 6 months from the time of adoption be when you should adopt. And I want to note too that again, rough estimate of $300,000 a year is based on a full year. So if it was not adopted until September, October, or effective until September, October, it wouldn't be quite a full year of revenue. We're not going to know what the revenue is until after you've got a couple years of track record.
That was going to be my question about how long it would take to implement. And, I'd rather get it right to start with. And if it even if it meant a January 1 implementation date, I mean, I think we need to get it right from starting. And I agree with what Mr. Lewis said. The only thing I would say is that we need to continue to monitor our neighbors, not only the cities, but our neighbors along 81 and 64 to what their tax rate. We don't want to somehow hurt our businesses. So we just need to monitor that on an ongoing basis.
Okay, Leslie here. Is there any way we can time the start date of this tax with those other localities?
Maybe with coordination with Lexington and Buena Vista, but we just don't have any control over who goes first, but we can certainly try.
Okay, hearing no other comments, does anyone have any objections to directing Ms. Huffman to prepare the ordinance and bring back to us the first meeting in February with a rate of 30 cents? Hearing none, Ms. Huffman, I think you're good to go.
Chairman Lyon, if when you're doing this, if you can use this sheet, the one with the red, it's lined up better for us.
Got it. All right, we're going to move back and finish appointments. We have the Blue Ridge Resource Authority, which all members of the Board of Supervisors are on the slate. So hopefully no one has objections to being reappointed. Thank you.
I think that one we do need action on.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the members of the Board of Supervisors to serve on the Blue Ridge Resource Authority Board?
So move.
I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
And the chair votes yes, too.
I have some comments. I'll include them in the board comments when we get there.
Okay. Rockbridge Regional Jail. We've had Mr. Suter and Mr. Hoskins. They are both willing to serve again.
Yes, and it rotates every year between a recommendation from the town of Goshen and the town of Glasgow. It's Glasgow's turn to make a recommendation, and due to some unforeseen circumstances, they're not ready to make that just yet. So I would ask that you hold off on that one, and if it's the board's will, appoint the other two.
All right. Does anyone have any objections?
Would the Goshen representative stay until such time as Glasgow bring someone forward such that the board is full?
Yes.
Okay. The board liaison with the
But
Virginia,
we do need action on
you
that.
need action on that one too? Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Day?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Liaison to the Virginia Horse Center. Mr. Lewis, it has been, would you
I'd like to continue.
you'd like to continue? Do we need board action or can we?
That one you can do by consensus.
Okay, any objections to Mr. Lewis? Great. Appointment to the Chamber of Comment. It has been Ms. Ayers. She has conflict. I'm willing to step into that position unless someone else would like to do it. Any objections? And the board liaison to the Economic Development Authority. That has been Mr. McDaniel. You wish
I'm
to-
willing to continue if needed.
Okay, any objections? Okay, board liaison appointment to the Staff Economic Development Committee. It has been Mr. Lewis.
I would continue.
Any objections? The Building Code Board of Appeals, we have an application. I don't think everyone's had time to receive it, so I'd like to vote on that at our next meeting. Community Service Board, has everyone had a chance to review the application of Hugh Ferguson?
Move we approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, all right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. And just for note, since I'll be moving to the Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Ayers has agreed to fill my spot with the executive with the school board. Okay, has everyone had, did I leave anything out? Are we good?
I think that's it.
Everyone had a chance to review the monthly staff reports?
Move we approve with appreciation.
Motion to approve with appreciation. Do we have
Second.
a second? And a second. Mr. Lewis? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, our next regular meeting is Monday, January 25th.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. We haven't, is that before the board comments or after? I apologize.
You know, we're going to get to board comments. That's part of board comments.
All right.
The joint meeting with the school board is scheduled for January 21st. Are there any other comments from the board? Mr. Lewis?
Besides me. In reference to the Blue Ridge Resource Authority appointments, I have for 3 years been trying to move this board and that board towards citizen representation, as the original intent of it was to at some point get there. I can't understand why I haven't had support for that, but haven't so far. But so I'm accepting the appointment at this time until I can bring forward a qualified candidate that the Blue Ridge Resource Board would approve of from the Walker's Creek Magisterial District, which I don't think the bylaws specify, but as we do with other boards and commissions, it's, even if it's not specified, it's generally tried to work that way. So I would accept the nomination in that fashion.
Well, thank
So I
you,
hope to
Mr.
bring a
Lewis.
candidate forward.
Okay. Mr. Suter, we have a need for a closed meeting. We also have a 7 o'clock meeting. Is it going to be possible to finish the closed session by 7? Or are we going to have to?
Depends on board discussion. It's, there's a little bit of logistics that go into, there's going to take a minute or two to close this meeting down, go into closed session, then we'd have to jump back off to get back on. So my gut would be, I don't think you have time.
I have some more comments.
Well, comment away, Mr. Lewis.
So I'll bore you for a few more minutes with another thought. The, Mr. Suter, in the introductory section here of this fine document, comprehensive annual financial report, the section relating to local economy, it's not industry, but it's certainly a large part of the economy here in the county is agriculture. And unless I missed something, I'm not sure that was included in there. I know I'm putting you on the spot for 8 paragraphs that you wrote a long time ago, but I guess the point is, I think it's important to the county, and if there's some way to quantify that for future introductory documents, I think it would be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll recess and we will probably be able to reconvene, I'm hoping by 7:30.
So just so everybody's clear, what anybody in the public that's wanting to view this, the board would recess now, and the Blue Ridge Resource Authority meeting will begin at 7 o'clock. There's not a whole lot on the agenda. Then at the conclusion of that meeting, this board would reconvene, and then with all business, unless there's any other business, which there really isn't anything else on the agenda, would go into closed session. And then after the closed session, come back out of closed session and adjourn the meeting. So just so everybody.
And we are not anticipating any action coming out of the closed session.
Spencer, do we need to sign into a different Zoom call for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority, or are we able to stay on this one?
No, you're going to need to sign into a different one. That link is sent as well. It's in your email. But if you don't
I have it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Closed session?
Yeah, just sign into that one.
Are they, and what one will they use for closed session?
We'll go back to the board meeting for closed session. And part of this has to do with the ability to start and do the recording. We had to separate the meetings to 2 meetings so that we could pick up the recording again for the board meeting, keep them separate.
We used a different program before when we went into closed session. Rather than Zoom, we used another program before.
We'll be using Zoom, but we mute the mics and we mute or turn off video and mute the mics.
Because we've updated our system.
Because we have the new audio video system, and in order for both meetings to go to go back to back like this, we can't have the two different Zoom meetings going at once. Didn't have enough time to get that set up. I believe we will have a solution to that in the coming weeks. But as of now, we have to basically end this meeting because we have one licensed account. We'll start the next meeting. Because of the one account, we can only have one concurrent meeting at a time.
Stefan, there seems to be some feedback. I keep hearing some. Oh, it's a
Is
clock.
that only when I'm speaking?
All right. Sorry.
Not the football game in the background.
I'd like to just thank Stefan as well for everything that he's done.
I remember seeing it last year.
I also just wanted to make a note that there was an attendee who had raised their hand during the Robinson Farmer Cox presentation. I just wanted to make a note of that to y'all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Stefan, I think we're good till we come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Two people. I will vote.